O'Brien didn't realize she was married to a complete stranger until she went to Home Affairs to try and register the birth of her child, and it's taken 15 years to get that marriage annulled. What a scary story. I've heard of it happening before, but to take 15 years to work it out is extreme.
And what's worrying is, so she's not the only one. There's been plenty of cases where it's taken more than a decade for people to annul those marriages once that paperwork has been put in place and you've been married fraudulently. So it's an absolute nightmare. Yeah, you're right. We need to double check.
ELIZE is back. ELIZE, just tell us why it took so long to get this marriage that you did not consent to annulled, and how did this person even marry you?
The main thing is he didn't know me at all. I don't know him at all. Since when my baby's birth, I went to register on my surname, but the main thing is I couldn't get her on my surname because I'm married to someone without my consent. So afterwards, when I went to birth my child, I couldn't put her on O'Brien because they couldn't allow me to do that. So then I was putting her on the father's surname, which is King, because of the fraudulent marriage that I'm in. So the door was closing in my face constantly for 15 years. So constantly when I went to Home Affairs to sort out this major problem, they just can't give me feedback. So then, since that time, I've been battling up till now for 15 years, and my life is quite hectic. So I don't know this person at all, and I didn't give any consent to this marriage. So now, I spoke to the minister this morning, and then he said to me, I'm divorced from this person, but they are busy with paperwork. So on my point of view, I'm not sure. Because I don't have any knowledge of it. I've just heard it. I'm divorced. I've never saw anything on the system. So I'm waiting for feedback on Home Affairs.
Very quickly, ELIZE, sorry to interrupt, very quickly, how did this affect your life, having this situation? Did it affect you in any logistical way, practical way?
Yes, it did. Because for 15 years, I was like battling, I was like struggling. I've been to shack to another shack for 15 years. And my spouse, we couldn't get married the time when I met him. So we'll be together now for 12 years. And I have a baby boy with him. He's almost 10. And from that time, I was battling. I couldn't afford rent because I was like paying the rent with my grant money, which is not much. I'm only receiving grant for 2 children. And I'm trying to do life with it. But I'm still struggling. It's still hassling for me. The place where I'm staying is very, very inconvenient. And I don't know how long will this take again for me to get my life back. But I'm fighting. I'm still battling.
All right. Thanks so much, ELIZE O'Brien. It's brave of you to come on air, and we thank you. And Tapfuma will be trying to discover next how on earth this actually happens and why it took so long to solve.
So what if you are actually married to a stranger? What do you then do? Let's speak to Gary EISENBERG. He's an immigration attorney and a founder of EISENBERG and Associates. Gary, thank you so much for joining us. ELIZE is not the only woman who's waited for more than a decade to have a fraudulent marriage annulled. So if you find this out, then what do you do? What steps do you take?
The first thing you do is go to the police station, depose to an affidavit, outlining what has happened to you, the information you have, the fact that you are not aware of being married to this particular person if you know his or her name, and take it to the Department of Home Affairs. I believe on the DHA website there's a contact number that you should call, a counter-corruption unit within the Department of Home Affairs. Problem over here is that reportedly there are 2,000 cases a year reported of a fraudulent marriage by those obviously adversely affected by that. Now, the Department of Home Affairs, we well know, simply doesn't have the capacity to investigate near that number of alleged fraudulent marriages, let alone anything else. So the lack of capacity is the big problem over here, and this is why it takes so tremendously long.
Gary, the investigation is meant to be put in place and then it's supposed to lead to you getting the marriage annulled. it's taken more than a decade for some of these people. Is that where things are falling apart with the investigations?
First of all, as I've said, the DHA doesn't have sufficient numbers of trained investigators. With ordinary matters, and there are a number of areas where these investigations need to take place, on prohibitions, on undesirabilities and so on, Home Affairs in ordinary cases may take a year or longer. They simply don't have the capacity. Number two, with regard to allegations of fraudulent marriages, it could be a tremendously complicated situation where, for example, the marriage officer who's supposed to have solemnized legally by following the precepts and requirements of the Marriages Act in requiring affidavits or proof of identities of both parties to a marriage, him or herself has acted fraudulently. The Department of Home Affairs needs to know that. Secondly, even without a marriage officer doing anything, a corrupt Home Affairs official can simply place information given to him or her by a fraudster for money in some kind of corrupt transaction and place those details on the population register. The problem is removing the information from the population register, and all of these issues are dealt with in a very archaic and old-fashioned, a Stone Age apparatus with no capacity. Thus, a year, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, geological timeframes are therefore the consequence. And that's unfortunately what the public is stuck with, an archaic Department of Home Affairs dealing with these matters.
Gary, so it seems as if these women who fall prey to these schemes really have no recourse. So what happens if you're stuck in this process for 10 years? What can you do?
For the ordinary man in the street, it's very difficult. In our law, in our administrative law, if the Department of Home Affairs has failed to act, for example, in terms of the Identification Act, where it comes to the attention of the Director General that information has been placed, in this case, in respect to marriage details on the population register that shouldn't be there, and he has failed to act, one can write him a letter of demand and then go to the High Court to judicially set aside the delay. Now, I don't know if the public is aware of these remedies, but it's expensive to hire a counsel. It's expensive to go to the High Court, wherever you may be, and Home Affairs, of course, can oppose you, leading to a drawn-out set of High Court proceedings, which can be very expensive. So the man in the street is quite stuck in actually invoking those remedies.
Gary, it seems like these women stuck between a rock and a hard place, but thank you very much for shining a light on some of the other remedies that they have. Gary Eisenberg, an immigration attorney and a founder of Eisenberg and Associates.